So now we've had a bit of a look at how to attack the strings properly. I want to go a bit further than that before we get onto exercises. We were talking about trying to have the pick parallel to the strings so that it points towards the headstock and you get no resistance to anything. This works with pretty much anything, which is one of the things I didn't say in the last video. Good example would be strumming. So if you're strumming through strings and you want to do something like this, you can kind of see when I'm doing this, there's no tension in the hand, and I can strum through the strings very, very easily. If I instead have the pick perpendicular, you get that. And nobody wants to hear that. It sounds horrible and also feels horrible to play. That's when you get stuck on all the strings and you can't really ever really get any momentum behind your technique, and your rhythm sucks. All those kind of things are caused by trying to get this to work, and it never works. So you're always trying to keep the pick a little bit more parallel to the strings to reduce that effect. Now, if you want to make it sound less scratchy, all you have to do is, let's say this is your pick and this is a string. All you have to do is make it slightly less parallel, but each sort of 10 degrees you go makes a massive difference to how your guitar sounds. I'll just demonstrate that quickly. If I have the pick super parallel on that top string, very scratchy. You can really hear it. If I tilt that 10 degrees, that's not so bad. All I've done is gone from here to here. I haven't had to make a massive adjustment. So even though it's not now parallel to the strings, it still almost feels the same, and you still can get through the string with very, very little force and have the same sort of effect, even though we've changed the angle very slightly. And by changing that angle very slightly, suddenly you've opened up the ability to play with a semi-decent tone. You know, it used to sound like this when we're pointing completely parallel. It now sounds like this. That's not so bad. So again, you've got to find what you're able to get away with here. How much of an angle do you have to add back in before it sounds good and you can stop? Because as soon as that sounds good to your ears, that's where you should stop, because anything further than that is going to cause you a problem, because you're going to just be using too much force and attacking those strings in a way of which is going to ruin your technique. So very, very simple. But just try and find how much you have to add from the parallel position, as opposed to doing it the other way round, which is to start at 90 degrees and back off. There's a reason for that, because you should never start where the technique's awkward in the first place. You start from the foundation of relaxed technique and then you add to that. That's always the case, and it's a really crucial part of all of these videos. Next thing is exercises. So what exercises actually work? What are the ones of which you can practice basically one thing and immediately get way better at the guitar? Well, if you sort of redefine the word exercise into something that's a little bit less set in stone, you're going to get better results. And what I mean by that is you need to practice all the different variations of a certain exercise. You can't just practice one thing and get really, really good at it. So my favorite exercise for teaching alternate picking is sequences of 3 notes on 2 strings. So we take a pentatonic, for example. Let's say we take a minor pentatonic and I do something like this. That's your pentatonic. I take those middle strings, D and G, and I do this. All I'm doing there is going alternate picking, down, up, down, down, sorry, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. For some reason harder to say than it is to play. The point is that is teaching you all the different variations in the technique that you need. So you can go and do inside picking string change, outside picking string change, etc., etc. You're flitting between both of those if you use strict alternate picking to do it. And so you're creating a feedback loop, and the feedback loop is incredibly quick. You're changing strings constantly, so you're constantly having to adjust your technique with iteration. But then also you're practicing both different directions of inside and outside picking, which is crucial here, because most of the even note exercises, things like Paul Gilbert patterns, things like 3-note per string, sixes, all these kind of things. They only do one of those motions. It's either outside picking or it's inside picking, and you don't do both. So exercises that do both are 100 times better because you're practicing all the different possibilities. And if you take that exercise and instead of just sticking on those strings, you start to try and take it through different string sets, you're then on to a winner. So I'll show you what that looks like. If I do something like this. Again, changing some of the notes on the fretting hand just to keep my fretting hand a bit more agile. And I could change boxes of the pentatonic. Etc, etc. And really try and develop that all across the neck, because again, these two hands are linked. You can't just practice one thing in one place and hope that you're going to be able to pull that off in a completely different fretboard position. It's not quite that simple, and weirdly as well, because the string resistance sort of changes depending on what the fretting hand is doing. If it's really high up here, if it's really low down here, it feels different to play from the picking hand. So you need to make sure the exercises you're using are not static. The idea is 3 notes, right? 3 notes that patterns that go between 2 strings. But you can take that idea and do it in 100 different variations all the way across the neck. Now, this brings me on to the next thing, and this is where we get onto the slightly more controversial side of things. A lot of people love metronomes. I hate static metronome. I hate it with a passion because it's a rhythmic tool. It's not a speed tool. Static metronome does not help you get your speed to anywhere other than shit. So what you need to do is make sure you are using variable metronomes. These have been my sort of trick in my back pocket that I don't talk enough about. So I'm using an app called RhythmBot here. You don't have to use this app. I think it's very, very good. It's got a lot of great sight reading stuff on it as well if you want to get into sight reading. That's a completely different topic. But the metronome on this allows me to incrementally increase the BPM every so many bars. So I've got this set, so it's going to go up 2 BPM every 4 bars. And I'm just going to give you an idea of what it sounds like to practice like this. I'm not going to do it for that long because otherwise it would drive everyone insane. But let's say we have it on and I'm going to do this. So. And once I'm comfortable, I'm going to start moving this pattern around. And right there, we're up to about 85 BPM now. And you might not even have noticed the change there, but I've gone up 10 BPM by doing that and not really noticed, which is incredibly useful for technique because it means you can focus on relaxation and not speed, which is really important. You don't want to be pushing your technique really hard against a metronome. Instead, just do it against a slowly increasing BPM and see where you start to get stuck. Then reset the whole thing and do that again. But that is an incredible feedback loop because it's teaching me to relax, it's teaching me to play those ideas in time, and it's also slowly increasing the speed, so my technique has to increase with that to keep up with it. Hopefully that's useful, and in the next video we'll talk more about patterns.